Hello, welcome. It's the Resilient Rooster. I'm back with another Yu-Gi-Oh video, and today I'm going to be showcasing Evilswarm. So Evilswarm is kind of like an anti-meta-ish deck. One of their XZ basically prevents monsters from special summoning level 5 or higher, so it locks down some decks, but for the most part it's kind of like maybe power creep. But there's a new link monster which is the Steelswarm Origin, and this card, it makes the deck a little bit better, and this is basically why I'm showcasing it, just to see like the implications that you can do with this card. So one of the tech cards that's in this deck is basically the Tia Maton, the Steel Battalion Dragon, and basically if there's three cards in the same column, you can basically use this card, special summon it, and then destroy any you can choose a zone, and whatever you choose it to, it basically destroys all the cards in that zone. One of the best ways to use it is basically when you make the Evilswarm card and you destroy a card, you special summon it, and you already have two. So all you have to do is just set a random spell or trap, and you can just use this as like a hand trap to just disrupt your opponent. So this is my deck list right now. If you want to just change anything, feel free to. Let's get right into the replays. In this first replay, I'm playing against ABCs, and I get to open up two hand traps. I get to open the Ghost Ogre and the Steel Dragon. Right now the Steel Dragon's not live, but you can always try to make it live by playing through the zones that your opponent plays through. So my opponent played through the middle, so I got three cards in the middle and basically special summon my Steel Dragon, which forced the strike. Otherwise I would get a free 2k beat stick. I tried to make Ophion, but I got Ghost Ogred, which is quite unfortunate because basically if you make an Ophion, you can just win against ABC since they can't special summon their Buster Dragon. And hopefully your back row can protect your cards, but right now I was kind of in a tough situation. The only good news though is my Origin basically is untargetable since it's linked. As long as it's co-linked, you can't target the card. So my opponent kind of makes a misplay here, but I'm not sure if it mattered. If they did banish my back row, I think I would have been able to make like Borlo Dragon and probably steal one of their ABC cards and hopefully link with their cards, or not link cards, but XZ with their cards so they can make ABC Buster next turn. But since they banished the wrong card, I was able to go off, and this is the part where I got a lot of monsters on board. And that's the cool thing about this monster is if you destroy a lot of monsters, you get a lot of monsters. And as soon as I got Ophion, it's basically game over since they can't special summon, and I got the Pandemic to protect all my cards from any destruction. They try to make some plays, but since they're restricted to just level 4s, then it's kind of hard for them. I also had there can only be one, so even if they try to go to the Link or XZ, they're gonna be limited. And here I probably should have activated the sensor differentiation, that way they can't special summon any cards. But in the end, a win is still a win. I would say one of the difficulties in playing with this deck is if you're going first and you're not sure what you're playing, it's kind of hard to make a decision on what you need to make. Should you make like the Ophion? Should you make like the Baguska? Or should you make like the Origin? And I feel like if you have some sort of disruption to destroy cards, I would say maybe making Origin is the better play. So right now I have like the Bottomless and the Strike, which basically is like a two sort of disruptions, which is pretty good because you can basically get the special summon effect of Origin and make it co-linked. So that way you can start your plays next turn. So I couldn't destroy any of their cards that turn because they kind of dodged like my Bottomless, and I probably should have used Strike instead of the Ash. That way I would have kept some of my advantage. So I make Ophion and I tried to get the effect, but I was denied with the Ash. But that's one of the things about Evilswarm is basically you try to grind your opponent slowly. So right now they have like the Scapegoat, but I try to prevent them from using Scapegoat by special summoning the Steel Dragon to get rid of the back row. So I basically just beat a big threat out. Otherwise they would have been able to make Borlo Dragon and steal one of my monsters and attack. And I really like there can only be one in this deck because all your cards are basically different types. We have the Steelswarm Origin, which is a Fiend. Ophion's a Dragon. The K is basically a Spellcaster. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And then the Caster's Warrior. So they're all different types, which is very good with this deck. Since Trickstars are mainly fairies, they can't really bounce or use Licorice to bounce their cards because they can only control one at a time. So at this point my opponent is basically kind of on their last leg. They could use a Strike, but most of the effects like doesn't hurt it if it's like co-linked. Because right now my Steelswarm Origin is co-linked, so they can't really destroyed by card effects. One of the most ideal board that you want to make with this deck going first is the Origin with Ophion, and that usually will, hinder your opponent a lot since your monsters will be protected by Pandemic when you search it. And one of the best ways to get into that play is with a Rescue Rabbit, and unfortunately for me, mine got Ash, so it kind of hurt a lot. So that's sort of like the downside with this deck, is it's kind of weak to hand traps, but that's why you run traps to help slow down your opponent. So I was able to basically get rid of the Omega, but I had to use 2 cards, which was a lot. But I feel that since Evilswarm is kind of a slow deck, you sort of just have to grind when you play with the deck. And I decided just to make the Baguska, that way I can, help recover. As long as nothing happens, I can at least draw hopefully 2 cards and hopefully I unbrick. I got the Rescue Rabbit again, and I feel like it wasn't necessary since I can't win that turn, so I just hold on to the Rescue Rabbit. It wasn't until I got the Torrential Tribute, which basically makes my card alive again, and this is the part where it sort of shines. So I was able to basically get rid of all their cards with the Steel Dragon, and I had enough to actually attack for game, so that was quite fortunate. I feel Evilswarm has one of the coolest XZs for their own archetype. They have cards like Bahamut, Ouroboros, Ophion, and Evilswarm Exoton Knight. That card is kind of banned, but maybe in the future it'll come back. I feel since there's so many negations in the game, it's probably okay coming back maybe. So right now my opponent, they were able to get the grass looks greener off, but they didn't really have enough to basically go on. So I was kind of lucky, but the bad part was that they had Fairy-Tale Snow in their grave, which kind of cut my plays short. Otherwise my Rescue Rabbit would have been doing work. Well, fortunately for me though is, since this is kind of like an anti-meta back in the day, they have cards where they can just special summon themselves, so I was able to basically kind of recovered. I got the Origin, and Origin can get another monster if it destroys a card. So I was able to come back for a little bit. And this is the part where I got the Bahamut to steal the Fairy-Tale Snow, that way they can't use it again. I felt like I had a good position in terms of hand advantage, but since last ones they used the grave, it kind of sucks since they were able to just to swarm their field. They were able to make the Curious, and they get to go off at this point. They had enough to make a Trishula, and Trishula is good in getting rid of the Steelswarm Origin since it can't be destroyed by battle if it's linked. So they were able to get rid of its own side effects of that card. And next they were able to basically get rid of the Rescue Rabbit, which was one of my chance of coming back into the game. And now they made Baguska, so at this point, I'm top decking. I got a Torrential Tribute, which is kind of good if they try to overextend, but they were smart enough to just attack me for game. In this last replay, I'm playing against Evoke Mech Knights, and since I don't have any cards that can destroy cards on my opponent's turn, I decided to make the Ophion. I also have there can only be 1, so there's basically like 2 floodgates on the field. And at this point, as soon as I figured out what I was playing, I felt very good in the position I was in. I have the Pandemic to protect my Evilswarm Ophion, and there can only be 1 can basically protect me from, cards that create multiple threats. But since they can't special summon any cards at level 5 or higher, this is basically a lockdown against Mech Knights. It's basically a free win. So all it's gonna be is like a back and forth battle. As long as I can get rid of all their cards before they draw like a board wipe, then I should be able to win this duel. So that's kind of like the thing of how you play Evilswarm. I say that the hardest thing is basically what do you make first, and I think that all depends on your hand mostly. If your hand is good enough to spam the board, then you should be able to make the Origin first and then the Ophion later. But if you don't have any board wipes like Torrential Tribute or like Bottomless, then I would say making Ophion is probably the better play, or maybe even Baguska. Right now my opponent, they can't do much, so I'm just doing beatdown Yu-Gi-Oh, and you basically just repeat this until you win the game or they surrender. And my opponent, they don't really have any more cards at this point, so I was able just to end the game by Infestation and then Dark Hole and attack. So that's it for this replay. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. If you want to see more Yu-Gi-Oh content, please click the subscribe button. Thank you for watching and have a great day.